The doorbell chimed once. My home system whispered, "Duplicate key used." On my phone, I saw two familiar faces carrying boxes, walking in like they owned the place. 30 seconds later, the siren ripped the air. The street cam caught the moving truck already backed into the driveway. I hit record right in the middle of my budget meeting and watched my marriage dissolve in real time. My name is Skylar Campbell. I am 33 years old, and on the day my life fractured, I was exactly where you would expect to find me, in the third-floor conference room of Northbridge Ledger Works, methodically dissecting a departmental budget. I am the head of financial operations for our Red Hollow, Colorado branch. My job is to find inconsistencies, to mitigate risk, and to protect the bottom line. I am, by nature and by trade, a person of meticulous, unyielding discipline. The room smelled, as it always did on quarterly review days, of burnt coffee and the sharp, chemical odor of whiteboard markers. I was mid-sentence, pointing with a laser at a graph projecting our third-quarter liabilities. My voice was calm, my tone measured. I live in a world of numbers, of spreadsheets, of assets and debits. It is a world I understand, and a world I can control. It was this precise control that had allowed me to build the life I wanted. I started when I was 21, fresh out of college with my first real salary. While my peers were celebrating their newfound freedom with bar tabs that spiraled into the hundreds and impulsive car leases, I was mapping out my future. I opened a brokerage account. I set up an automatic monthly transfer. I didn't just save. I invested. I lived on less than I made. I avoided debt like a physical illness, and I watched my net worth tick steadily upward, month after month, year after year, in a quiet, satisfying rhythm. My dream wasn't a sports car or a sprawling mansion. It was a fortress, privacy, security, a sanctuary. My criteria were non-negotiable: a modest footprint, solid construction, and most importantly, a fully enclosed private courtyard surrounded by high, impenetrable walls. I dreamed of a place where the noise of the world, the demands, the chaos, the endless, draining need of other people, could be muted, kept at bay by a physical barrier I owned and controlled. Last March, after 12 years of relentless, quiet discipline, I found it, a single-story Adobe-style home in the older, more established part of Red Hollow. The walls were thick, the courtyard was serene, and the ownership was entirely, unequivocally mine. The down payment, the mortgage, the title, all secured by me, with my assets, from my accounts, before I had even met my husband. I spent the first 6 months making it perfect. I didn't care about granite countertops or spa bathrooms. I invested in infrastructure. I had the electrical rewired. I had fiber optic cable run directly to the house. My home office became a command center, with a fully integrated smart home system. The lights, the climate, the locks, all of it was networked. The front door and the garage operated on digital key codes, unique and changeable. It was my space, finite and defined, my refuge. Then, about 3 months ago, the neighborhood had a small crime wave, nothing violent, opportunistic, petty theft, cars left unlocked, a garage door left open overnight. It was a minor irritation to most, but to me, it was a variable I hadn't accounted for, and it pierced my bubble of security. It made my skin crawl. My husband, Caleb Merrick, was, as usual, not there. Caleb is a strategy consultant. His job is to fly around the country, Minneapolis one week, Austin the next, and tell other companies how to run their businesses. He's charming, brilliant, and perpetually in motion. He was, at that precise moment, at a conference somewhere in the Midwest. This meant I was alone in the house, a fact that suddenly felt less like peaceful solitude and more like stark vulnerability. So I did what I always do. I analyzed the risk, and I neutralized it. I didn't buy a consumer-grade doorbell camera. I called an enterprise-level security firm, the kind that secures data centers and corporate campuses. They installed a system that was, frankly, glorious overkill for a 2-bedroom house. High definition, Night vision cameras covering every conceivable angle of the exterior and interior common areas. Glass break sensors on every window. A direct, cellular-backed line to a private monitoring service. And of course, an app on my phone that gave me full administrative control to every feed, every log, every event, in real time. It was wildly expensive. It was worth every single cent. My phone vibrated on the conference table. A flat, aggressive buzzing sound against the polished wood. My entire team looked up. I never, ever took personal interruptions during these reviews. "Excuse me," I said, my voice tight with annoyance. "Operations, one moment." I picked it up. The lock screen was lit with the white shield icon of my security system. A stark, white-on-black notification. Break-in detected, front door, duplicate key. My blood ran cold, then vanished into a clinical calm. Duplicate key, not a forced entry, not a broken lock, not a smashed window, a key. My mind did a rapid, frantic audit. I had my key code. Caleb had his. I had given a physical backup key to my mother, who lived 2 states away, sealed in an envelope for a worst-case scenario fire or flood, and then the memory surfaced, slick and unwelcome. Caleb, standing in the kitchen 6 months ago, jiggling the spare physical key on his finger. "I'm just going to give this to my mom. Lydia," he'd said, all casual charm. "Just in case. You know, if we're both traveling and someone needs to check on the house." "And Lydia will immediately give it to Brielle," I'd argued, my arms crossed, my voice flat. "Sky, don't be like that. They're family. Family has to help family." Family. Caleb's family was a financial sinkhole. His sister, Brielle, and her equally ambitionless husband, Dax, were a 2-person vortex of bad decisions. They drifted from one gig economy job to the next, perpetually between opportunities, all while maintaining a lifestyle that suggested a trust fund that didn't exist. They were experts in emotional leverage, masters of the sob story, always needing just a little help to get back on their feet. Getting back on their feet had cost me, personally, a significant amount of money. I'd discovered, almost a year ago, that Caleb had been loaning them money from our joint savings account, thousands of dollars. When I confronted him, the fight was nuclear, ending only when he deployed his ultimate weapon, the watery-eyed family helps family guilt trip. I hated the conflict more than I hated the expense, so I'd acquiesced, with one rigid, ironclad condition. I moved all their loans to my personal, private account, the one he couldn't touch. I paid their rent directly to their landlord for 4 agonizing months, just to end the cycle of them asking Caleb for cash and him crumbling. "This is the last time, Caleb," I had told him, my voice shaking with a cold, contained anger. "I am not funding their lives, and they are never to treat my home like their personal bank or their next hotel." He had promised. He swore it. I stared at the notification. Duplicate key, my thumb. Trembling so hard, I almost missed the icon. Tapped the alert. The app launched. The loading circle spinning for a half second that felt like an hour. Then, the live feed from my living room filled the screen. They were there. Brielle and Dax. They weren't creeping. They weren't hiding their faces. Brielle, her bleached blonde hair thrown up in a messy bun, had her hand on her hip, casually surveying the room as if she were inspecting a potential rental. She flicked on my custom-installed track lighting, the warm light illuminating the art I had spent months choosing. "See?" she said, her voice tinny and sharp through the phone's speaker. "It's perfect. The couch can go against that wall." Dax, bulky and slow-moving, was already pacing off the dimensions of the entryway, his lips moving as he counted. Yeah, plenty of room for the console." My brain couldn't process the data. It was a system error. This was not a visit. This was not an emergency. My shaking thumb swiped left, changing feeds. The street camera. The sight that greeted me punched the air from my lungs. A U-Haul. A massive 20-foot moving truck was backed up my pristine driveway, its roll-up door wide open, Its loading ramp extended directly to my front walk, and on the pavement, like an invading army's beachhead, was their furniture, a stained queen-sized mattress encased in crinkling plastic, a cheap, particle-board disassembled bed frame, a faux leather recliner with a visible, angry tear in the arm, and boxes, dozens of damp-looking cardboard boxes. I zoomed in, my fingers pinching the screen, the image pixelating slightly. On the side of the largest box, scrawled in thick, arrogant black marker, were 2 words: Master Bedroom, my bedroom. I fumbled for the audio icon, jabbing the listen and speak button. The 2-way audio activated just as my home's automated defense protocol kicked in. Warning, a calm, synthesized female voice announced from the speakers in my living room. This property is secured. A valid passcode has not been entered. Please state your passcode now, or the authorities will be dispatched. I heard Brielle laugh. It was a high, grating sound that always set my teeth on edge. Oh my God! Shut this thing up. Dax, where's the plug? She's so extra with this robot crap. Dax's voice, muffled as he moved toward the hall. It's probably hardwired. Babe, just ignore it. It's fine. Please state your passcode now, the system repeated, its voice polite but firm, cutting through their casual chatter. And then I heard Brielle, her voice rising in petulant frustration, shouting at the ceiling speaker. It's fine. We're fine. It's Caleb's house. We're his family. Just shut up. The boardroom was utterly silent. 8 pairs of eyes were fixed on me, on my pale face, on the phone clutched in my white-knuckled hand. It's Caleb's house. The words echoed in my head, louder than the alarm, louder than the concerned murmurs of my colleagues. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a social call. This wasn't borrowing the guest room for a weekend. This was a hostile takeover. This was a planned, deliberate, full-scale invasion of my sanctuary. They weren't here to visit. They were here to stay. And my husband, my partner, the man I had trusted, had not just left the door unlocked. He had handed them the key, rolled out the welcome mat, and signed my name on their lease. I raised a hand, my voice emerging steadier than I felt. There is an active security situation at my home. I need to leave. Now. I didn't wait for a reply. I swept my phone and laptop into my bag and walked out of the conference room, my heels striking the polished floor in a sharp, urgent rhythm. I bypassed the elevators, pushed through the heavy fire door into the stairwell, and let the cool, concrete silence envelop me. I leaned against the metal railing, my breath catching, and forced my mind to shift from panic to process. I was no longer a wife. I was an analyst. And this was a data breach of the most intimate kind. My fingers flew across the glass of my phone, opening the full security dashboard. This was my command center. I swiped from the living room camera, where Brielle was now peering into my kitchen, to the street cam. The U-Haul was still there, a fat, orange and white monument to their audacity. Its ramp extended to my walkway. I tapped again. Garage camera. Empty. Thank God. They hadn't tried to access my car or the storage within. I swiped to the backyard camera. Clear. They were, for the moment, contained in the front of the house. I navigated to the Event Logs tab. My heart hammered against my ribs. There it was. Time-stamped at 2:04 p.m. Event. Front door unlocked. Method. Physical key. Duplicate. ID 002B. 002B. I knew that ID. I had labeled it myself in the system. It was the key I had reluctantly given Caleb, the one he swore he was giving his mother. Lydia. For emergencies only. The key I had explicitly, angrily told him was not for Brielle. Under any circumstances, the log was immutable. It was the digital fingerprint, the undeniable proof of the source. This wasn't a stranger. This was a conspiracy. I switched back to the living room feed, activating the audio. I needed to understand the scope of their plan. They had moved past the entryway and were now in the guest wing. I watched, my stomach clenching. as Brielle pulled a roll of blue painter's tape and a thick black marker from her oversized purse. She walked directly to the door of the spare bedroom, the room I used as a secondary office and my private yoga space, and tore off a long strip of tape. She stuck it to the center of the door panel. I zoomed in, the high-definition feed making the image perfectly, sickeningly clear. She had scrawled 2 words on it: our room. Dax, meanwhile, was oblivious to the system's repeated, blaring warnings. He was on his own phone, his back to the camera, his voice low and conspiratorial. I cranked the volume on my feed, the app isolating his voice. "Yeah, the truck's here now," he was saying to someone on the other end. "We're just getting the big stuff in today. We can grab the rest of the boxes, the electronics and the kitchen crap, early next week, Monday or Tuesday. Yeah, she'll be at work all day. It'll be fine." Early next week, my blood turned to ice. This wasn't a temporary crash. This wasn't asking to use the guest room. This was a scheduled, phased move-in. They were setting up residence. They intended to occupy my home. My hand was shaking so violently, I had to set the phone down on the concrete step to dial. The alarm was still blaring in the background of the feed. The system was programmed to wait exactly 5 minutes from the initial siren before automatically dispatching police, a buffer to prevent false alarms. I was not waiting 5 minutes. I dialed the Red Hollow Police non-emergency line. A dispatcher answered on the first ring. "Red Hollow Police, how can I help you?" "My name is Skylar Campbell," I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. "My home security system has been breached. The alarm is active. I am watching a live video feed of 2 individuals inside my house right now. I need to confirm officers are en route." "Yes, ma'am," the dispatcher said, her voice instantly shifting to professional calm. "I see the active alarm at my address. The system flagged it as a duplicate key entry, but the premises password was not provided. Can you confirm this is an unauthorized entry?" "Yes," I said, 100% unauthorized." "Do you recognize the individuals, ma'am?" "I do. It is my sister-in-law, Brielle Merrick, and her husband, Dax." "And they do not have permission to be in your home at this time?" "They do not have permission. They have not notified me. I have not given them consent to enter my property. They are, as I speak, moving furniture from a U-Haul truck on my driveway into my house." "And you are the homeowner, ma'am?" "I am the sole owner of the property. My name is the only name on the deed." "Okay, Ms. Campbell, I have 2 units responding. They are approximately 3 minutes out. Given that you are off-site and can confirm they are not tenants and have no legal right to be there, the officers will be handling this as a confirmed unauthorized entry. They will detain them pending your arrival or a formal statement. Please remain on the line if—" "Thank you," I said. "I'll be there as soon as I can. I need to make one more call." I hung up before she could reply. The adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. This was now a legal matter. My operations brain took full control. I needed redundancy. I needed a chain of custody. I opened my laptop on the stairwell landing, tethered it to my phone's hotspot, and logged into my secure cloud storage, the encrypted, triple-authenticated vault I used for sensitive work documents and my personal legal files. I accessed my security dashboard through the web portal. I selected the events from the last hour. Key log 002B. Living room feed, 1404 to 1415. Street feed, 1402 to 1415. Audio log, Dax. Phone call. Audio log, Brielle. It's Caleb's house. I hit download all and began a direct, encrypted transfer of the raw video and audio files to the cloud. I created a new folder. I labeled it Home Invasion, November 7th. I watched the progress bar creep across the screen. This was my proof. This was the truth that no one could gaslight, minimize, or family their way out of. Only then, with the evidence secure and the police closing in, did I allow myself to call my husband. He was in Minneapolis, attending a 3-day strategic leadership summit. He picked up on the third ring. his voice breezy and distracted, the indistinct roar of a crowded convention hall echoing behind him. "Hey, Sky, I was just about to text you. Listen, this keynote is amazing. The guy's talking about—" I cut him off. My voice was a flat line. "Why are Brielle and Dax in my house?" The silence on the other end was absolute. The background noise of the conference seemed to fall away. "What?" he finally said, his voice no longer breezy. "I am watching a live video feed of your sister and her husband moving their furniture into my living room with a U-Haul. My security system is going off, and the police are on their way. They used the emergency key. Caleb, the one you gave your mother?" "Oh, crap," he muttered. The sound was small, guilty. "Sky, wait, call them off. Call off the cops." "Call them off?" I whispered, the words like glass in my throat. "Yes, it's fine. I told them they could stay there for a bit. It's just temporary." The concrete beneath me seemed to drop away. I told them. You what?" "They got evicted. Sky? Their landlord finally kicked them out. They had nowhere to go. I told them they could use the house for a few weeks. Just until they found a new place. It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal?" I repeated, my voice dangerously low. "It is not a big deal that you gave them permission to move into my house, behind my back, without my knowledge or consent?" "Come on, it's our house," he said, the old, familiar dismissiveness creeping into his tone, the one he used whenever I set a boundary he didn't like. "We have plenty of room. It's a big house. What's the point of having all that space if we can't help family?" "It is not our house, Caleb. It is my house. I bought it with my money, from my accounts, 12 years before we were married. It is my name on the title, and my name alone. You had no right." "Jesus, Sky, don't start with the legal crap. This is family. Just call the police. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. I'll call Brielle right now and sort it out. You're overreacting." He was already minimizing, already pivoting, already making me the unreasonable one for protecting my own property from a literal home invasion that he orchestrated. A new kind of cold settled into my bones. This was different from the shock. This was the cold of absolute, brutal realization. I looked at my phone, still displaying the active call with Caleb. I swiped down, opened my audio recorder app, and pressed the bright red button. The record light glowed steadily. "Caleb," I said, my voice now perfectly calm, the recording active. "Let me be very clear. I am not calling off the police. Your sister and her husband entered my home without my permission. They are trespassing. Their permission from you is legally meaningless, as you are not the owner of this property and have no authority to grant access." "What are you doing? Why do you sound like that?" he stammered, the bluster gone, replaced by a sudden note of panic. "Skylar, this is crazy. You're going to have my sister arrested. You can't do that." "Your sister is currently being detained by the Red Hollow police, who, I can now see on the street camera, have just arrived. I have video footage of the entire event. I have the logs of the key you gave away. I have an audio recording of Dax planning to bring the rest of their belongings next week. This was not an emergency, Caleb. This was a planned occupation." "You recorded them?" he yelped, his voice cracking. "My security system records everything, Caleb, and from this moment forward, so am I." I ended the call. I didn't listen to his sputtering reply. I watched on the street camera as 2 uniformed officers approached a visibly shrieking Brielle, while another officer calmly spoke to Dax, who was gesticulating wildly toward the house. Caleb's verbal permission was a puff of smoke. It was a social agreement he'd made using my assets as collateral. It was meaningless. What was real was the digital log, the high-definition video, the audio of their voices claiming my space. The law was on my side, my safety, my property lines, my ownership. They were not negotiable. They were not up for discussion. And I suddenly understood, with chilling certainty, that my husband was not my partner. He was just another liability I had failed to mitigate. I didn't drive fast. I drove at exactly the speed limit, my hands at 10 and 2, my breathing metronomic, The chaos was contained in the phone in my passenger seat. The reality was the quiet, orderly progression of traffic in Red Hollow. I was an operator, moving from a compromised satellite office back to the primary data center. When I turned onto my street, the scene was exactly as my cameras had depicted, only now in silent, flashing blue and red. The U-Haul was still parked in my driveway, a monument to their failed coup. 2 police cruisers were angled behind it, blocking any exit. An officer was taking a statement from my next-door neighbor, Mrs. Davies, who was on her porch in a bathrobe, pointing animatedly at the truck. Brielle and Dax were gone, processed, removed. I parked across the street, walked to the ranking officer, and introduced myself. I'm Skylar Campbell. This is my property. I provided my statement. I was concise. I used the timestamps from the security log. I explained the key system. I confirmed, unequivocally, that they had no right of access, no tenancy, and no permission. The officer was professional, handing me a card with a case number. The U-Haul, he explained, would have to be impounded as part of the scene. I thanked him. I walked up my own driveway, past the boxes marked master bedroom, and stood at my front door. It was closed, but it felt open, violated. I typed in my primary code. The system disarmed with a polite, digital chirp. I stepped inside. The house was silent, but the air was thick with their presence, a faint, unfamiliar smell. Was it cheap perfume? Or fast food? A dirty smudge stained the wall near the entryway, where they had clearly failed to navigate a piece of furniture. I stood in the center of my living room, and for the first time since I bought it, I did not feel safe. My phone rang. The screen flashed. Caleb. I set my bag down on the kitchen counter. I took a deliberate, calming breath. I tapped accept, and then I tapped record. What the hell did you do? He wasn't charming now. His voice was high, tinny, and cracking with panic. I just got off the phone with my mother. Brielle's at the police station. They're booking her. Skylar, you have to go down there, right now, and tell them it was a mistake. There is no mistake to fix. Caleb, I said. My voice was a flat line. It didn't waver. A mistake implies an error in the system or a misinterpretation of data. What happened was a fact. A fact? It was a misunderstanding. That's all. You're going to let my sister get a criminal record over a misunderstanding? The system reported a security breach. It did its job. The police responded to a verified unauthorized entry. They did their jobs, and I am now securing my asset. I am doing my job. Your asset? Your asset? It's a house. Skylar. It's family. She's going to have this on her record forever. Do you know what that does to someone? You have to retract it. I cannot retract reality. Caleb, I have video of them moving in. I have audio of them planning to bring more items next week. This was not a visit. This was an occupation, and you sanctioned it. You? He sputtered, incandescent with a rage that was born entirely of being caught. You are unbelievable. This is my family. Yes, I said. It is. I ended the call. I saved the file. Caleb call mistake demand 1512. MP3. I uploaded it to the home invasion folder in my legal cloud. The phone rang again, almost instantly, a number I knew by heart but had not saved. Lydia Merrick, Caleb's mother, the matriarch, the source code of their collective entitlement. I let it ring 3 times. I activated the recording app. I answered. Skylar, dear? Her voice was saccharine, dripping with false concern. Caleb just called me. He sounded absolutely hysterical. What on earth is this terrible misunderstanding at the house? Poor Brielle is just devastated. They're saying the police took her. Hello? Lydia, I said. The air in my kitchen felt 10 degrees colder. There is no misunderstanding. Brielle and Dax used the emergency key, the one Caleb gave you, to break into my house and move their furniture in. The sweetness evaporated in a microsecond. Her voice became hard, defensive. Break in? Skylar, don't be so dramatic. That's a terrible thing to say. I told them they could go over. Caleb said it was fine. My fingers tightened on the phone. I'm sorry. You told them? You told them to move into my home? Of course I did, she said. Her tone clipped, as if speaking to a slow child. They were evicted. Skylar, they had nowhere to go. That house is enormous. You have all those extra rooms. Just sitting there empty. It's a waste. Family is supposed to help family. That's what people do for each other. They needed a place, and you have one. It's simple. It was the sheer, breathtaking arrogance of it, the casual assumption that my property was her asset to distribute. Lydia, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. Let me be absolutely clear. You do not have the authority to give away my property. That house is mine. My name is the only name on the title. It is not family property. It is my asset. You gave them a key to a house you do not own, and you directed them to occupy it. That is a crime. There was a long, heavy silence on the line. When she spoke again, all pretense of the concerned mother-in-law was gone. Her voice was pure steel. You are making a very, very big mistake. Skylar, a terrible one. You think that piece of paper makes you strong? You think that wall around your yard means anything? Family is stronger than any piece of paper. You push this. You try to hide behind your little locks and your lawyers. You are going to find yourself very, very alone. You mark my words. It wasn't advice. It was a threat. Thank you for confirming your involvement. Lydia. I ended the call. I saved the file. Lydia call admission threat. 1517.mp3. I uploaded it. My hands were shaking now. Not from fear, but from a rage so pure it was almost electric. The phone screamed again. This time, the screen showed Brielle Merrick. I took a breath. I hit record. I answered and put the phone on speaker, placing it on the granite countertop. It was not a voice. It was a shriek, a wall of high-pitched, hysterical sound that filled my kitchen. You bitch! You fucking cunt! Do you know what you did? Do you know what you did to me? I said nothing. I let the recorder capture the raw, unfiltered audio. The neighbors, Mrs. Davies, everyone from the whole goddamn street saw me. They saw the police put me in a car, like a criminal. I am so humiliated I could die. This is your fault. You did this. What did you expect to happen, Brielle? I asked calmly. When you broke into my home? It's my brother's house, she screamed, the lie so practiced it came out fluidly. He said we could. He said it was fine. You had no right. You had no right to scare me like that. I'm having panic attacks. I think I'm going to have a heart attack. I might need to go to the hospital. You did this to me. I waited. The silence stretched, filled only by her ragged, sobbing breaths. You are going to pay for this, she hissed, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. I'm serious. You owe me. I'm already talking to a lawyer. You embarrassed me. You caused me severe emotional distress. You are going to pay me $20,000. Skylar, $20,000, or I am suing you for everything you have. You'll see. And there it was. The pivot. The demand. The line clicked dead. I saved the file. Brielle call extortion 20K. 1521, MP3. Uploaded. It was almost comical. The phone rang again. Dax. I hit record. His voice, unlike Brielle's, was attempting to be reasonable, which made it all the more menacing. Look, Skylar, this all went sideways. Brielle is a complete mess. You really need to call off your cops. This is a civil matter, not a criminal one. We had verbal permission from Caleb. That's a binding contract in this state. We have a right to be there. You technically just illegally evicted us. Dax, I said, picking up the phone, my voice like ice. You are not a tenant. You are a trespasser. Caleb has no legal standing to offer my property as a rental, verbal or otherwise. Any further contact from you or Brielle, on any matter, will be forwarded to my attorney. Do you understand me? He started to bluster. Now, you listen here. I hung up. I saved the file. Dax call verbal permission claim 1523.mp3. Uploaded. I stood in the silence of my kitchen. The home invasion folder was now populated with 6 files: 2 video, 4 audio, a perfect, undeniable timeline of a conspiracy, an invasion, and an extortion attempt. This feeling, this nauseating cocktail of betrayal and theft, it was familiar. I walked to my office. I sat down at my desk, my command center. I pulled up my personal financial records. I navigated to a secure, encrypted folder labeled Marriage Finance. Inside was a subfolder, Discrepancies. I opened a bank statement from our old joint savings account, dated 8 months prior. My eyes found the line item I had memorized, a transfer, $5,000. The memo line was blank. I remembered that weekend perfectly. I had asked Caleb about it. "Oh, that," he'd said, not even looking up from his laptop. "That was just a deposit for the Minneapolis conference. Work will reimburse it." A casual, easy lie. I clicked the next file in the folder. It was a screenshot from Brielle's Instagram feed, posted 2 days after that $5,000 transfer. It was a picture of her and Dax, grinning, holding margaritas on a beach. The geotag, Cabo San Lucas. The caption, "My amazing brother Caleb sent us on a surprise vacation because we've been working so hard. We are so blessed. Best brother Cabo." He had stolen from me, from us. He had taken money meant for our shared future, our retirement, our goals, and he had given it to his parasitic sister for a vacation, and then he had lied to my face. That was the day the trust had atomized. That was the day I had made my first appointment with Ava Stanton, my friend, who was also the most ruthless civil attorney in Red Hollow. That was the day I stopped being a wife and started, once again, being a risk manager. The rage I felt then was a hot, blinding thing. What I felt now was entirely different. It was cold. It was clear. It was the absolute final click of a lock falling into place. I stood up and walked to the gray 2-drawer filing cabinet in the corner of my office. I opened the bottom drawer, past the user manuals for the dishwasher and the HVAC system. Beneath a stack of old tax returns was a single, thick manila envelope. I pulled it out and placed it on my desk. The paper inside was crisp, heavy bond. I had paid Ava to draft them last month, right after the anniversary of the Cabo surprise. I had printed them out and just held them. A contingency plan, an escape hatch, a fire extinguisher waiting for the inevitable blaze. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Petitioner, Skylar Campbell. Respondent, Caleb Merrick. I stared at his name. He hadn't just left the door unlocked. He had coordinated the attack. He had acted as the inside man, leveraging my trust to compromise my security. My home was my sanctuary, my boundary, my fortress. They hadn't just used a key to open a door. They had tried to tear the whole structure down. They had proven, all of them, Lydia, Brielle, Dax, and Caleb, that my safety and my ownership were, to them, nothing. Just minor inconveniences in their quest for what they felt they were owed. They were not just unwelcome, they were a threat. I picked up the pen from my desk. The time for negotiation was over. The time for contingency plans was over. I didn't bother to sit down. I stood at my office desk, the unsigned divorce papers a crisp white rectangle on the dark wood, and dialed the only number I knew I could trust. Ava Stanton and I had been friends since college. We'd bonded in a 24-hour library over mutual exhaustion and a shared, obsessive need to ace a microeconomics final. I'd gone into the sterile world of corporate finance. She had gone into the bloody theater of civil law. Ava was, to put it mildly, a shark. She was my best friend, and she was the person I called when I needed to burn something to the ground, legally. She picked up on the second ring, her voice already sharp. "Stanton, you've got 3 minutes. I'm walking into a deposition." "Ava, it's Skylar. Cancel it." The background noise of her office lobby, the muffled phones, the chatter, stopped. I heard the click of a door. Silence. "What happened?" she said. It wasn't a question. I need a full-spectrum legal response, I said, my voice as level as a balance sheet. Trespass, property, civil, and almost certainly criminal, and I need to file for divorce. Today. Give me the data, she said. I opened my laptop and pulled up the Home Invasion folder. I clicked Share, typed in her private email address, and hit Send. You have 6 files, I said, pacing the office. File 1, high-definition video from my street camera, time-stamped 2:02 p.m., showing a U-Haul truck backing into my driveway. File 2, high-definition video from my living room, time-stamped 2:04 p.m., showing my sister-in-law, Brielle, and her husband, Dax, using a duplicate physical key to enter my home. The log confirms it was key 002B, the one I gave Caleb. The emergency key, Ava said. Her voice was flat. I knew that tone. It was her loading the shotgun tone. The video shows them bringing in their furniture. I have clear audio of them discussing bringing the rest of their belongings early next week, and a clear visual of Brielle taping a sign that says, Our Room, onto my guest office door. Good. That establishes intent to occupy. That kills any, we were just visiting defense. What else? File 3. An audio recording of a call from Brielle, time-stamped 3:21 p.m., in which she screams at me for the humiliation of being detained by police. It concludes with her demanding $20,000 in cash as emotional distress compensation to prevent her from suing me. Ava let out a sound that was half hiss, half laugh. Oh, bless her stupid heart. That's not a lawsuit. Skylar, that's felony extortion. That's a gift. What's file 4? A recording of my mother-in-law, Lydia. She admits she was the one who told Brielle to move in, that she directed them to my house. She ends the call by threatening me, saying I will end up very, very alone if I hide behind my little locks. I'm taking that as a direct threat. It is, and it establishes conspiracy. The last 2? Calls from Caleb and Dax. Caleb confirms he gave them verbal permission and demands I retract the police report, referring to my house as our house. Dax doubles down, claiming his verbal permission constitutes a binding contract and that I illegally evicted them. The police have already detained and released Brielle and Dax pending my formal statement. For a full 10 seconds, Ava was silent. I could hear the faint scratch of her pen on a legal pad. Okay, she said. Her voice was now surgically precise. This is not a domestic squabble. This is a multi-front legal war, and we are going to win it on every front. Here is what happens now, not tomorrow, now. I grabbed my own notepad. First, Ava said, you are done talking to all of them, every single one, Caleb, Lydia, Brielle, Dax, their dog, their mailman. You do not answer a call. You do not reply to a text. You do not answer the door. They no longer exist to you. All communication, of any kind, goes through me. Is that clear? I am your firewall. You let me handle the emotional manipulation, because to me, it's just billable hours of them incriminating themselves. Clear, I said. Second, I am, as we speak, drafting a cease and desist and a formal notice of no trespass. It will be sent via courier, process server, and certified mail to Brielle and Dax at their last known address, and to Lydia's address for good measure. It will state that any attempt to approach you, contact you, or set foot on your property will result in their immediate arrest. There is no warning. The U-Haul was the warning. Good. Third, your police report. You need to go down to the station, in person, within the next hour. You will give your full, formal statement. You will provide the case officer with copies of all 6 files. You will specifically reference Lydia's threat and the risk of retaliation. This is critical. We need the police to formally note the elevated risk, which will get us a basis for extra patrols around your house tonight. I'm on my way as soon as we're done. Fourth, the restraining order. Based on the trespass, the clear intent to occupy, and the direct threat from Lydia, we can get an emergency protective order. We'll file for a permanent one that covers the property itself, making it a fortress. If they are seen within, say, the 500 feet of your lot line, they are in violation. Do it. Fifth, she said, her voice dropping. The house. I know the answer, but I have to ask. The prenup. Section 4, subsection B, I said, pulling the document from the same envelope as the divorce petition. Separate property. I've got the original scanned right here. I opened the file. It explicitly lists the Red Hollow property, by its full address and parcel number, as sole and separate property of the wife, purchased prior to the marriage, with funds verified as premarital assets. It states, and I quote, "The husband shall have no right, title, interest, or claim to said property, its appreciation, or its use, under any circumstances, including dissolution of the marriage." And the title? Ava asked. Sole name, Schuyler Campbell. The mortgage is in my name, paid from my separate bank account, into which my salary is deposited. The money I used for the down payment is documented in a separate file, tracing it directly from my premarital brokerage account. Beautiful, Ava breathed. It's an iron box. He has no claim. He's not a tenant. He's not an owner. He's a long-term guest, and his invitation is hereby revoked. His verbal permission to his sister is the legal equivalent of your mailman giving them a key, utterly irrelevant, which brings me to the divorce. You're sure? I looked at the petition on my desk. I've been sure for 8 months. Ava, this was just the final data point I needed to execute the plan. Good. Leave it with me. We'll file with the trespass and extortion as context. It'll give us incredible leverage on splitting any minor shared assets. Not that there are many. There's one more thing, I said. Walking to my office window, I could see the street. It was quiet again. The evidence. What about it? It's on my cloud, but the original files are on the hard drive of the security system's base station. I want to preserve the chain of custody. Ava's voice filled with approval. You're thinking like a lawyer. Good. Call your security provider. Right now. Tell them you have an active legal case and you need a technician to come out. Remove the hard drive and seal it in a forensically sound, static-proof bag with a signed chain of custody document. Tell them their legal department can call me directly. We are not letting them tape over that original footage. I'll call them next. Last thing, Schuyler. And this is the most important. I waited. Go into your security app, go into the administrative settings, the emergency contacts list, the authorized users. My fingers were already moving, tapping the icon on my phone. Delete them, Ava said, her voice cold steel. Delete Lydia, delete Dax, delete Brielle, if she's even in there, and delete Caleb. Remove his access code, remove his digital key, remove him as an emergency contact. As of this moment, he is legally an adverse party to you. If he shows up, he is no different from his sister. He is a trespasser. I was already there. The list of authorized users. Schuyler Campbell, owner. Caleb Merrick, spouse. Lydia Merrick, emergency. My thumb hovered over Caleb's name, the man I had married, the man who had flown to my side when I had the flu, the man I had laughed with in this very house, the man who had, with full knowledge and intent, given the key to my fortress to the people he knew I feared most. I pressed delete. A confirmation box appeared. Are you sure you want to revoke all access for user Caleb Merrick? I pressed confirm. His name vanished. I did the same for Lydia. Her name disappeared. The list now held one entry. Schuyler Campbell, owner. The fortress walls were sealed. It's done, I said. Good, Ava said. Now, I have to go to that deposition. I'll file the initial notices before I walk in. You go to the police station. Call me the second you have the case number. We are in this, Sky. We're going to dismantle them. We hung up. I stood in my silent office. The house felt different again. It was no longer violated. It was a clean room, a secure server. I picked up my bag. I had my list. I had my evidence. I had my attorney. The emotional response, the shock, the betrayal, the rage, all of it was being firewalled. It was now a legal proceeding, and in a legal proceeding, just like in my job, I never, ever lose. He must have caught the first flight he could out of Minneapolis. I had just finished my call with the security company. A technician was scheduled for 8 a.m. tomorrow to forensically seal the hard drive, when my phone lit up with a new notification from the outside system. Front door. Access denied. Code, Caleb Merrick, disabled. A second later, another notification. Garage keypad. Access denied. Code, Caleb Merrick, disabled. I heard the furious pounding of a fist on my front door. The physical, primal sound was jarring after a day of digital warfare. He was locked out. The reality of what I had done was sinking in for him, not as a concept, but as a physical barrier he could not breach. I walked to the door, my footsteps measured. I checked the peephole camera. It was him, his face distorted, purple with rage, his overnight bag slung over his shoulder. He looked less like a high-powered consultant and more like a petulant child locked out of his playroom. I disarmed the system and opened the door. He didn't wait for an invitation. He stormed past me, shoving me aside with his shoulder as he burst into the entryway. "What the hell is this? Skylar? You locked me out? You locked me out of my own house?" "It's not your house, Caleb," I said, closing and relocking the door. "We established that you. He threw his bag down on the floor. It hit the tile with a heavy, wet thud. "You are going to fix this, right now. You are going to call your attack dog Ava. You are going to call the police, and you are going to tell them this was all a giant, hysterical mistake. You are going to apologize to my sister. We are going to handle this in the family." I felt a cold, calm smile touch my lips. It was an involuntary reaction. Handle it in the family. You're right. I walked to my office, leaving him fuming in the entryway. He followed me, stomping behind me. "That's right. This is a private matter. This is not for lawyers. This is for a husband and a wife to—" I sat at my desk and pressed a combination of keys on my keyboard. A small, discreet green light appeared on the smart home hub. The in-house audio system, perfectly legal to activate in my own home, for my own protection, to document his threats, was now recording everything. "I agree," I said, swiveling in my chair to face him. He was standing in the doorway, his chest puffed out, radiating an anger that was, I now realized, just repackaged fear. "Let's handle this in the family. Let's start with the family finances." I turned back to my monitor, opened the discrepancies folder, and printed 2 documents. I didn't get up. I rolled my chair back to the filing cabinet, retrieved the manila envelope, and returned to my desk. I held the papers in my hand. "What is that?" he snapped. "More of your legal crap?" "This," I said, walking past him, back into the living room, "is our joint savings account statement from 8 months ago." I placed it on the coffee table he and I had picked out together. I pointed to the $5,000 transfer. "You told me this was a reimbursable deposit for your Minneapolis summit." His face went pale. The reimbursement was just delayed." "Don't, Caleb, just stop." I placed the second paper on top of it. The screenshot of Brielle's Instagram post from Cabo, best brother. His eyes flickered from the picture to my face. The anger was gone, replaced by the cornered, sullen look of a teenager caught in a lie. "You were working hard," he muttered, deflecting. "You wouldn't have agreed to it. They needed a break." "They wanted a vacation. You stole from our shared future to pay for it, and you lied to my face." "It's just money. Skylar, you have plenty of it. That's all you care about." "I care about trust, and I care about risk," I said, my voice hardening. "Which brings me to this." I laid down the third piece of paper. It was a copy of his corporate American Express statement from 6 weeks ago. "You've been sloppy about mixing your expenses, so I thought I should check for any other family loans you'd forgotten to mention." He looked at the page, and all the color drained from his face. He knew what it was before he even read the line item. "Red Hollow Auto," I read aloud. A $2,000 charge. That's a hefty deposit. And look at that. Dax has been driving a very nice, new-looking truck for, about 6 weeks. The truck, I'm now certain, that he used to haul his furniture to my front door. That's a mistake, he stammered, backing away. That's not, they're going to pay me back. You used your corporate card. Caleb, the one Northbridge LedgerWorks pays. The one you are explicitly forbidden from using for personal expenses. This isn't just you stealing from me. This is you committing corporate fraud. This is grounds for immediate termination. This is your entire career. He finally broke. The bluster, the rage, the entitlement. It all shattered. He looked, for 1 second, utterly terrified. You wouldn't, he whispered. You wouldn't tell them, Skylar. It was a mistake. I was going to pay it back before the billing cycle closed. I ran out of time. They needed it. They had no transportation. They have no jobs. Caleb, they have no income, and you were willing to risk your entire professional life to enable them? You don't understand, he shouted, the panic turning back into desperate, corner-pounding rage. You've never understood. It's what you do. My mother knew. She knew you'd be like this. She said you were cold, that you'd never be real family. That's why she had her own key. The room went utterly silent. I stared at him. The internal recorder was capturing the ambient air. She had her own key? I repeated, my voice deadly soft. So the key you gave her, the one you told me about, 002B, that was a second key. You gave your mother and your sister both unauthorized, unlogged, duplicate keys to my house. He realized what he'd said. His eyes widened. No, I meant, she just held on to the one I gave her, the emergency one. Stop lying, Caleb, I said. The log was clear. 002B was used, the key you gave your mother, but now you're saying she had her own key, one you gave her because you knew I was cold. You went, behind my back, and had another key forged, a third one. It doesn't matter how many keys there are, he exploded, his voice cracking. It's our house. It's my house, too. What's yours is mine. Skylar, that's what marriage means. You don't just get to lock your husband out. This was it, the core of his belief system, that his presence, his status as husband, automatically diluted my ownership, that my assets were, by default, his to dispense. No, Caleb, I said. I stood up and walked to my desk. I picked up the manila envelope. That is not what our marriage means. I walked back to him. He was breathing hard. His fists clenched. I pulled out the first document, the prenuptial agreement. I handed it to him, already open to the correct page. Section 4, I said. Subsection B, separate property, read it. He stared at the words, his eyes scanning the page, his brain clearly struggling to process the dense legal text. This is just, it's just paper. Sky, this isn't real. This is just something your lawyer made you sign. It's the most real thing in this room, I said. I reached back into the envelope. I pulled out the second set of documents, the ones I had printed out last month, the ones I had filled out this afternoon. Petition for dissolution of marriage. I placed them, very gently, on the coffee table, right on top of his corporate card statement. He stared at the title. He looked at my signature at the bottom of the front page. You, he whispered, you're divorcing me? Over this? Over one little mistake? Over a lifetime of them, I said. This wasn't a mistake. This was a conspiracy. You, your mother, your sister, you planned it, you used me, you put my safety at risk, you stole from me, and you lied about all of it. This is the consequence. His face contorted, and the fear was gone, replaced by a pure, narcissistic wound. You think you can just do this? He hissed. You think you can just kick me out of my life? No, I'm not signing that. I'm going to fight you. I am going to get the best goddamn lawyer in Colorado. And I am going to take half of this house. I'll tell them I helped with the mortgage. I'll tell them I bought the furniture. I don't care what that stupid paper says. A judge will see. I will take everything from you." I stood perfectly still. I let his words hang in the air, echoing in the vaulted ceiling, every syllable being captured, logged, and stored. "I see," I said. He let out a guttural, frustrated roar. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer," he spat. He turned and stormed up the stairs to my, master bedroom. A moment later, I heard drawers being yanked open, the sound of items being thrown, not packed. I picked up my phone. I sent a text to Ava. "He's here. In-house audio is active. He has threatened to take half the house and fight the prenup. He admitted to a second unauthorized key for Lydia and confirmed the corporate card fraud. He is upstairs packing his things now." Ava's reply was instantaneous. "Good. Let him. Don't engage further. Be a gray rock. The recording is golden." I stood in my living room, listening to my husband, my soon-to-be ex-husband, having a tantrum upstairs. I walked to the security panel by the front door. I entered the admin settings. I created a new master code, one known only to me. I created a new, temporary garage code, also known only to me. I looked at the active user list. Just me. Good. I made 2 brief calls. The first was to the locksmith. "Yes, this is Skylar Campbell. I have an 8 a.m. appointment. I need to add a service. I also need every single internal door lock rekeyed, all of them, especially the master bedroom and the office." The second was to my mother. "Mom? Hi. I know this is strange, but I need you to go to your safe, get the sealed envelope I gave you, and overnight it to me. FedEx. First priority. Do not open it. Just send it. I'll explain everything soon. I promise. I need my key back." I hung up. I could hear Caleb stomping down the stairs. He was carrying his suitcase and his golf clubs. He glared at me, his face a mask of petty hatred. "You'll regret this, Skylar," he said. He walked to the front door, yanked it open, and stepped out onto the porch. I waited 1 second. Then, I hit the arm button on my security panel. "System arming," the polite voice announced. "Please exit now." Caleb spun around, his face incredulous. As the door slowly swung shut in his face, I heard the satisfying, heavy thunk of the magnetic deadbolt engaging. I was safe. The purge was complete. The fortress was secure. The silence in my house was absolute. The locksmith had finished his work by 10 a.m. His invoice a crisp, beautiful testament to my reclaimed sovereignty. Every physical lock had been replaced. The deadbolts were new, heavy, and keyed only to the 2 new copies I held. My mother's original emergency key was in a FedEx envelope, already on a plane back to me. The fortress was physically secure. But the war had merely shifted to a new theater. It was Ava who found it first. 3 days after the invasion, she sent me a link with a simple message. "The PR campaign has begun. Do not, under any circumstances, engage. Just read." I clicked. It was Brielle's public social media page. She had posted a long, rambling, typo-riddled monologue, accompanied by a picture of herself crying, her eyes red and puffy. "I'm so heartbroken I can't even breathe." The post began. "We fell on hard times, like anyone can, and my own brother offered us a safe place to stay. We were so grateful, just trying to get back on our feet, but his wife, who has always hated us, found out. She called the police on her own family. She threw us out on the street like we were trash, with all our belongings. I was arrested in front of my new neighbors. I've never been so humiliated. Please pray for us. We have nowhere to go. And she has a huge, empty house all to herself, with a heart as cold and empty as her spare rooms. Some people are just evil." The comments were a waterfall of misplaced sympathy. "This is horrible. What kind of monster does that to family? That's her husband's house, too. She can't do that. I'm so sorry. Brielle, we're praying for you." My stomach clenched. This was her weapon. Emotional manipulation. Public opinion. The poor me narrative she had perfected over a lifetime. She was painting me as a cruel, wealthy villain, a crazy, cold wife. It was the exact narrative Lydia had threatened. I was about to close the browser, my hands shaking with a new kind of rage, when a new email popped into my inbox. The sender was Mrs. Davies, my neighbor from 2 doors down, the one who had been on her porch in her bathrobe. The subject line was simple: video from my porch camera. The body of the email was just as brief. Skylar, I don't get involved in neighbor business, but I don't like bullies, and I don't like what I saw. I pulled the footage from my front porch camera from that day. I heard them talking about your alarm system before it went off. Thought you and your lawyer might find it useful. The timestamp is accurate. Attached was a single MP4 file. I downloaded it. I pressed play. It was a different angle from mine. It was wider, showing the full street, and it had been recording earlier. The timestamp on Mrs. Davies's footage was 1:51 p.m. It showed the U-Haul idling on the street before it pulled into my driveway. It showed Brielle and Dax getting out of the cab, looking at my house, and talking. The audio was clear. She'll be in that quarterly review until at least 5, Brielle said. Caleb said it's her biggest meeting of the month. We have plenty of time to get the big stuff in before she even knows. What about that alarm crap he said she installed? Dax asked, hoisting a box. He gave me the code, Brielle said, dismissively. It's probably just a beep. Don't worry about it. By the time she gets home, the bed will be in the master, and she can't exactly kick us out. It's his house, too. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just a smoking gun. This was a signed, videotaped confession of their premeditation. It proved they knew I was gone. It proved they intended to establish residence before I got home, specifically to make it harder to remove them, and it was all time-stamped. Caleb's story, his "I gave them permission, it was just a misunderstanding," had been vaporized. They hadn't yet received his permission call. This was their own plan. I immediately forwarded the file to Ava, along with the link to Brielle's post. Her reply was immediate and almost giddy. Skylar, your neighbor is a goddamn angel. We now have an ironclad timeline that predates any of Caleb's claims. And that social media post? It's not just libel. It's libel per se, accusing you of criminal-adjacent activity. We are adding a claim for defamation and damages to the civil suit. She is literally funding our legal fees with every share. Ava, in turn, bundled the social media posts, the comments, and the new video file, and sent them to the police detective handling my case, adding them to the file for the restraining order hearing. The next attack came 2 days later. It was an email to my personal account, from an address I didn't recognize. It was from Dax. Subject: Formal agreement. Urgent. Skylar. It read, "Your lawyer is ignoring us. This has gone too far. We had a formal, verbal agreement with Caleb to occupy the premises. You have illegally evicted us and are withholding our property, the U-Haul and its contents. We are being very reasonable. Attached is a copy of the temporary lease agreement Caleb signed, granting us residence for 6 months, rent-free, in exchange for property upkeep. If you do not instruct your lawyer to stand down and arrange for the return of our property by 5 p.m. tomorrow, we will be filing our own lawsuit for wrongful eviction, damages, and breach of contract." Attached was a 1-page PDF. It was a joke, a residential lease agreement, downloaded from a free Legal Forms website. The landlord was listed as Caleb Merrick. The tenants were Brielle and Dax Merrick. The property was my address. The terms were 6 months, $0, and at the bottom was a signature, a blurry, pixelated, clearly scanned and pasted image of Caleb's signature. I forwarded it to Ava without comment. This time, she called me. "He's an idiot," she said. No hello. "A complete, utter, gift-giving idiot. It's a fake," I said. "It's the worst fake I've ever seen," she replied. "The signature is spliced. You can see the digital box around it. I'm sending this to my forensic document examiner. I want a full report on the metadata. I want to know exactly when this file was created." "And the U-Haul?" I asked. "Already did it," she said. "I subpoenaed the rental records from U-Haul yesterday. Just got them. Guess who rented the truck?" Dax. Guess when? A full week before the break-in. Guess what address he gave for the destination? Yours. This wasn't a "we got evicted and had nowhere to go" emergency. Sky, this was a siege, planned a week in advance. A week? They had been planning this for a full week, while I was at work, sitting in meetings, sleeping next to my husband. They were plotting, in detail, how to take my home. The last vestige of shock or hurt I felt was burned away, replaced by a cold, surgical resolve. This was a chess game, and they were playing checkers. That night, I called my security company back. "I need an upgrade," I said. "I want glass break sensors on every window. I want high-lumen, motion-activated floodlights covering the entire perimeter. The brightest you have. I want to upgrade my cloud storage to the maximum retention plan. And I need to activate a new protocol. I want a silent alarm option. If I trigger it, I don't want the siren. I don't want the audio warning. I want a direct, immediate dispatch to the police with a trespasser in progress, owner on site code. Can you do that?" They could. A technician was there the next day. My house was now a Class A secure facility. The next step was the firewall. I went into my phone. Lydia Merrick, block contact. Brielle Merrick, block contact. Dax, block contact. Caleb Merrick, block contact. I went into my email. I created a new rule. Any message from any of their known addresses, or containing their names in the subject, was to be auto-forwarded, unread, to Ava's legal inbox, and then permanently deleted from mine. The silence was immediate. It was profound. The lines of attack were cut. I met Ava at her office and signed the final retainer, giving her full official power to act as my sole legal representative. Every harassing email, every threatening letter from whatever bargain bin lawyer they hired, every phone call, it all went to her. She was my shield. I took one more step. I wrote a calm, professional email to my homeowners association board. I was not gossiping. I was informing. "Dear board members, for security and community awareness, I am informing you that a temporary restraining order, case, has been issued against Brielle Merrick, Dax Merrick, and Lydia Merrick, prohibiting them from coming within 500 feet of my property. A copy is attached. I have also initiated divorce proceedings against my husband, Caleb Merrick, who is no longer a resident and has no access rights. The police have been notified and are conducting extra patrols. If you see any of these individuals on or near my property, please do not approach them and call the Red Hollow PD immediately. Thank you. Skylar Campbell." The board president replied in 15 minutes. "Thank you. Ms. Campbell, we will inform our private security patrol. We are sorry for this disturbance. The board was now my ally. The neighbors were my lookouts. My lawyer was my shield. My home was my fortress." The final piece of the strategy was preparation. The hearing for the permanent restraining order was set. I sat in my office, my command center. I opened a new presentation file. Slide 1. Timeline of events, November 7th. I began to populate it. 1351. Mrs. Davies's video. Brielle and Dax conduct pre-invasion surveillance. Audio confirms intent to occupy. 1402. U-Haul records. Rental truck. Booked 1 week prior by Dax. Pulls into driveway. 1404. My security log. Front door opened. Key ID 002B. Caleb's emergency key. 1405. My living room video. Brielle and Dax enter. 1407. My living room audio. Brielle shouts, "It's Caleb's house." 1408. My guest room video. Brielle tapes "our room" to the door. 1409. My living room audio. Dax confirms plan to move remaining items early next week. 1521. My call recording. Brielle's demand for $20,000. 1523. My call recording. Dax's claim of a verbal contract. 1530. Document. Fake lease agreement, forensically dated as created after the arrest. I laid it all out. A calm, indisputable, linear progression of facts. It was a beautiful thing. It was a fortress of data. This wasn't a messy family drama anymore. It was a financial operations report, and I was about to present my findings. The first escalation came at 2:17 in the morning. I was asleep, but not deeply. It was the shallow, vigilant sleep of someone securing a new perimeter. The alert that woke me was not a siren. It was the silent, insistent vibration of my phone on the nightstand, paired with a custom, low-level chime I had set for a perimeter breach. I was instantly awake. No adrenaline, no panic, just process. I tapped the screen. Alert, backyard sensor, motion detected, zone 4, patio door. I opened the live feed for that zone. The new, high-lumen floodlights I'd had installed were blazing, washing my entire stone courtyard in sterile, artificial daylight, and in the center of it, frozen like a terrified animal, was Brielle. She was alone. She was squinting into the glare, one hand raised to shield her eyes. In her other hand, she held a piece of paper, an envelope. I watched, my finger hovering over the silent dispatch button as she scurried forward, her movements jerky and panicked. She wasn't trying to break in. This was a different kind of maneuver. She reached my back door, the solid wood one leading from the patio to the kitchen, and fumbled in her pocket for a roll of tape. She taped the envelope to the center of the door, at eye level. Then she turned and fled. Scrambling back over the low courtyard gate, her sneakers slipping on the dew-covered stones, she disappeared into the darkness of the alley behind my house. The sensor reset, the floodlights clicked off, plunging the yard back into blackness. The event was over. I saved the video file. Brielle, patio visit, Yo 217. Then I called Ava's emergency line. She was a night owl. I knew she'd be up. She answered on the first ring. What's the alert? Backyard motion sensor, zone 4. It was Brielle. She was alone. She taped a letter to my kitchen door. Did she try to gain entry? No. It was a drop-off. Don't touch it, Ava ordered, her voice instantly sharp. Don't you dare open it. Don't even go outside. That letter is not for you. Skylar, that letter is for the court. What do I do? You call the Red Hollow PD, non-emergency line. You report a violation of the temporary restraining order. You tell them the trespasser left an item on your property and you have the entire event on video. You will stay inside and you will let them come and retrieve it, wearing gloves. You will ask them to log it as evidence and provide a copy to Detective Miller on your case. That is a legal document, and we are going to maintain the chain of custody. I did exactly as she said. 45 minutes later, I watched through the same camera as a uniformed officer, his breath pluming in the cold night air, carefully peeled the envelope from my door, placed it in a clear plastic bag, and walked away. Ava called me at 8 a.m. She had already spoken to the detective. He scanned me a copy, she said. Her voice was vibrating with what, for Ava, passed as unrestrained joy. It's a masterpiece. Sky, a 3-page, handwritten confession. She's a complete idiot. What does it say? It's a classic, I'm sorry you feel that way, non-apology. It's full of, I know you're mad, and we just made a mistake. But then, on page 2, we get the gold. She read directly from the scanned copy. I know you think we were trying to steal your house, but that is so crazy. We would never. We just wanted to stay for a few months, maybe 6 at the most, just to save up some money and get our costs down. Caleb said you'd be fine with it. It's not like you even use those rooms. It was a favor. We were just asking for a favor, and you turned it into this horrible criminal thing. I closed my eyes, wanted to stay for a few months. She just admitted it, I whispered. She just confirmed, in writing, her intent to occupy. She sure did, Ava said. She destroyed her own, it was a misunderstanding defense. She destroyed Dax's verbal contract defense, and she destroyed Caleb's it was a temporary emergency defense. This one letter just won us the permanent restraining order. I'm adding it to the hearing file right now. The next attack came, as I should have expected, at my place of work. I was in my office at Northbridge Ledger Works at 9:30 a.m. when I got an instant message from my boss. Michael, Skylar, can you pop into my office? Have a moment? Michael was a decent man, no nonsense, data-driven, and intensely protective of his department's integrity. I walked to his glass-walled office, my stomach tightening. He motioned for me to close the door. Skylar, I just had a call, he said, and he looked deeply uncomfortable. It was from a woman named Lydia Merrick. My blood pressure spiked, but I kept my face impassive. She said she was your mother-in-law. She also said she was concerned about you, your stability, your erratic behavior. She implied you were having some kind of mental health crisis, that you were paranoid and lashing out at the family. Lydia, the workplace attack, the unstable card. Michael, I said, my voice calm and low. I am not having a mental health crisis. I am the victim of a coordinated criminal action, and Lydia Merrick is one of the perpetrators. His eyes widened. I'm in the middle of a legal proceeding. I am filing for divorce. I have an active temporary restraining order against Lydia, her daughter, and her son-in-law for a planned home invasion that took place last week. What she is doing is called witness intimidation and harassment. Michael's face hardened. She called the wrong office for that. I'm forwarding this to our HR department, he said, already typing. And I'm forwarding it to legal. This is harassment of an employee. We don't tolerate that. Will you please go speak to Diane in HR? Give her whatever context you're comfortable with. We're going to shut this down. Hard. I walked to Human Resources. Diane, our head of HR, met me with a concerned, professional expression. Skylar, she said, Michael forwarded me the notes from that call. That is deeply disturbing. Diane, I said, I appreciate the company's concern. To that end, I've prepared a file for you. I took a folder from my briefcase. I had prepared it for this exact contingency. It contained a copy of the police report, a copy of the temporary restraining order naming Lydia, and a polite, one-page summary from Ava on her official letterhead, stating that I was the plaintiff in an ongoing civil and criminal matter, and that any further contact from the adverse parties should be directed to her. I was not an unstable employee. I was an organized, documented victim with an ironclad legal response. Diane read the summary from Ava. Her expression firmed. Thank you, Skylar. This is precisely what we needed. Please, take any time you need. As of this moment, our general counsel will be handling this. That woman will not be calling your boss again. An hour later, a company-wide memo went out from HR. It was titled, A Note on Professionalism and Respect. It was a generic-sounding email, but I knew exactly what it was. It reminded all employees that the company's resources were not to be used for personal disputes and that Northbridge had a zero-tolerance policy for harassment of any kind, including harassment from outside parties against its employees. Lydia's attack hadn't just failed, it had backfired, giving me a documented corporate shield. The final, critical domino fell that afternoon. It came from Ava, in the form of a forwarded email chain. FWD, getting our story straight. The chain was between Caleb and Dax. Dax, clearly in a panic, had written, Caleb, your wife's lawyer is a psycho. She sent a subpoena for the U-Haul and the car. We have to get our story straight. Man, I told her we had a verbal contract. You have to back me up, and you have to fix this thing with your work card. I'm getting calls from the dealership. If they reverse that deposit, they're going to repo the truck. You have to tell your psycho wife to call them off. Caleb's reply was one word. Stop emailing me. He's terrified, Ava said when I called her. Dax just put the corporate card fraud in writing. Caleb knows he's cooked. He's cornered. He's about to do something stupid and desperate. She was right. 10 minutes later, my blocked caller list showed 7 missed calls from Caleb. Then, an email appeared in Ava's inbox. She forwarded it to me. From Caleb Merrick to Ava Stanton. Subject, stopping this Ava. Please, this is insane. I'll do anything. I'll give her the house. I don't care. I'll sign the papers. But she cannot call my work. She can't. It was a mistake. I'll pay it back. I just need this to stop. Please, just tell me what she wants." Ava wrote back a one-line reply. "My client wants a guarantee of her future safety. She wants all communication from your family to cease, and she wants the truth. She will consider not pursuing the corporate fraud complaint, which is a criminal matter, in exchange for your full, transparent cooperation. This means you will turn over your old phone, the one you were using for the past 6 months. You will do it today." It was a brilliant, brutal move. She was offering him a chance to save his career, in exchange for the one thing he could not afford to give her: the evidence. He folded in less than 5 minutes. Where? Ava arranged for a paralegal from her firm to meet him in a Starbucks lobby. He handed over the phone. By 6 p.m., Ava had the contents. "The phone is a gold mine. Sky," she said. Her voice was pure ice. "He's not just a fool. He's a willing co-conspirator." She began to email me the screenshots. The first was a text chain with Lydia. From 2 weeks ago. Lydia. "She's not going to agree. She's too cold. Too selfish." Caleb. "I know. Mom, I'll talk to her again." Lydia. "Don't talk. Just do. That boy needs a roof. Get the stuff in before she has time to get home. Once it's in, she can't do anything. It's your house too." Caleb. "Okay. I'll tell Brielle to aim for the 7th. She has that big quarterly review. She'll be gone all day." I stared at the screen. Before she has time to get home, she'll be gone all day. He hadn't just permitted it. He had timed it. He had used his intimate knowledge of my career, my schedule, against me. "It gets worse," Ava said. She sent the next image. It was a photo, saved to his camera roll. From 2 months ago. It was a receipt from a local hardware store, the kind with an old-fashioned key-cutting machine. 1 item, key duplication, 2 copies. At the bottom, a signature for the credit card slip. It wasn't Caleb's. It was Dax's. "He didn't just give them the emergency key, Sky," Ava said, her voice soft but furious. "He took your house key, drove Dax to a hardware store 2 months ago, and had him make his own copies. This was a long-term, premeditated plan. The eviction was just the excuse to finally execute it." I looked at the receipt. I looked at the text messages. I thought of Brielle's letter, of Dax's email, of Lydia's call to my boss. This wasn't a family misunderstanding. This was a coordinated, multi-front assault on my life, my home, and my career, planned for months, with my own husband as the inside man. "Thank you, Ava," I said, my voice empty of all emotion. "Add it to the file." "I already have," she replied. "The hearing is in 2 days. This is no longer a hearing. Skylar, this is a formality." The days between Caleb's expulsion and the hearing were a study in absolute, controlled silence. The blizzard of notifications, the texts, the blocked calls, the social media tags, had ceased. My firewall was holding, but the silence itself was loud. It was filled with the hum of the evidence I had collected, the data points of my own life that I was now forced to analyze as a hostile risk. The receipt for the 2 duplicate keys, signed by Dax, dated 2 months before the invasion. The text messages from Caleb to his mother, "She'll be gone all day." This was the axis on which my psychology shifted. The feeling was not the hot, sudden sting of betrayal. That had happened 8 months ago, with the Cabo trip. This was something different. It was the cold, clinical discovery of a deep, structural rot. It was the realization that my marriage had not been a partnership. It had been a long-term, compromised asset. My husband had not just failed in his duty to protect me. He had actively served as the vulnerability. The inside man who studied my defenses, my work schedule, my disciplined nature, and used them to coordinate the attack. My core values, the bedrock of my identity, were not just love or loyalty. They were safety, sovereignty, and the absolute integrity of my space. And I was looking at a detailed log of how every single one of those values had been systematically targeted. I didn't feel broken. I felt audited, and I had found the profound, unacceptable inconsistencies. Now, I was simply preparing the report for the board. Ava and I met in my living room the night before the hearing. The furniture was already rearranged. The spot where Caleb's recliner used to be was now empty. Clean floor. It felt better. "They will have a lawyer," Ava said, pacing the rug. She, unlike me, was vibrating with a high-frequency combat energy. "He will be cheap, he will be loud, and his entire strategy will be to paint you as a hysterical, cold, and vindictive woman. They are going to try to make you emotional." "I'm not emotional," I said, my voice flat. "I know, but they need you to look it. Their entire case is built on feelings. Their family. They were in need. You're cold. You overreacted. They will try to get you to yell. They will try to make you cry. They want to bait you into looking like the unstable person Lydia told your boss you were." She stopped pacing and looked at me. "So this is what you do. You do not answer the question behind their question. You answer the exact words they use, and nothing more. You are a gray rock. You are a human spreadsheet. You will bore them to death with the truth." She made me practice. "Ms. Campbell, you're a wealthy woman, aren't you? Head of operations? I am financially stable. And you live in this large, beautiful house all by yourself? I am the sole owner of the property. Weren't you just a little upset that your husband wanted to help his family? My husband does not have the authority to sign tenants into my property." "Tenants? Come on, this is his sister. Weren't they just visiting?" "They arrived with a moving truck, a fraudulent lease, and a sign labeling my bedroom, 'Our room.' That is not a visit." "But you had them arrested. Your own family. Wasn't that cruel?" "I reported a confirmed home invasion to the police." "Facts," Ava said, snapping her fingers. "Timestamps, data points. You do not engage with words like cruel, or family, or upset. You are a concerned homeowner. You are a victim of a crime. You are there to present the facts of that crime. Got it?" "Got it." While I had been purging my house, Ava's paralegal had been executing the core of our strategy. They had assembled the sizzle reel. It was 5 minutes long. 5 minutes of pure, undeniable fact. I watched them finalize the edit on Ava's laptop. It began in silence, with Mrs. Davies's porch camera. Time code, 1:51 p.m. Brielle and Dax. Standing on the sidewalk. Brielle's voice, clear as a bell. "She'll be in that quarterly review until at least 5. Caleb said it's her biggest meeting of the month." It cut. My street camera, 2:02 p.m. The U-Haul backing into my driveway. It cut. My front door camera, 2:04 p.m. The key, ID, sliding into the lock, the door swinging open. It cut. My living room camera, 2:08 p.m. Brielle, smiling, pulling out the blue tape and the marker. She tapes the sign to my office door. "Our room." It cut. Black screen, audio only. Dax's voice from the same feed, 2:09 p.m. "Grab the rest of the boxes, the electronics and the kitchen crap, early next week." It cut. Back to video. The system alarm begins to blare. Brielle, laughing. "It's Caleb's house." The final, brutal sequence. The screen went black again, showing only a blue audio waveform. My phone call, 3:21 p.m. Brielle's voice, no longer laughing, but a raw, hysterical shriek. "You did this! You owe me!" And then the demand. Clean, with no background noise. $20,000. Skylar, 20,000. The video ended. "That," Ava said, closing the laptop, "is the entire case. The judge will see that before their lawyer even opens his mouth." We reviewed the final risk assessment. The online libel campaign was still active, though I had seen none of it. Lydia had been successfully blocked at my office. The main risk, Ava argued, was re-entry or retaliation. "They are desperate," she said. "The restraining order is a piece of paper. You've hardened the house. Now you have to harden yourself. I had already, quietly, taken steps. I had spent a long, tedious hour on the phone with my home insurance provider, formally declaring the incident, the police report, and the associated risk. It wasn't just a break-in. It was a coordinated trespass facilitated by a compromised key holder. My premium went up by 7%. It was the best money I ever spent. It officially documented the Merrick family as a quantifiable risk to my asset. Ava, in turn, had contacted the Colorado Coalition for Victims of Home Invasion. After reviewing my police report and Brielle's handwritten, "We just wanted to stay for a few months" letter, they provided a formal letter of support for the hearing. Their letter classified the incident not as a domestic dispute, but as a pattern of escalating harassment and intimidation. The neighbors had come through. Mrs. Davies had submitted her notarized statement, attesting to the fact she saw Brielle directing the movers before any alarm went off. Another neighbor provided a statement confirming the U-Haul was on the street for at least 15 minutes, corroborating the premeditation timeline. The house was secure, the legal case was secure, but my body still felt the violation. I still woke up at 2:17 in the morning, the time Brielle had appeared on my patio. I still felt the ghost of Caleb shoving past me in the entryway, so I had signed up for a 4-hour, Saturday morning basic self-defense class. It was held in a bright, clean dojo. It wasn't about fighting, it was about reclaiming space. The instructor, a compact, powerful woman, taught us how to stand, how to root ourselves, how to use our voice not to scream, but to command. No. Back up. Stop. She taught us how to use leverage, how to strike a vulnerable point, an instep, a throat, a knee. I wasn't planning on fighting anyone, but when I walked back into my house that afternoon, I felt different. I felt my feet on my own floor. I felt the strength in my own core. My agency was not just in my security system, it was in my own 2 hands. That night, I began the final purge. Caleb had left in a rage, but his things, his presence, were still a stain. I went to the master bedroom. I pulled open the closet. His suits, his shirts, the ones I had paid to have tailored, his golf shoes, his ties. I did not pack them. I did not donate them. I had bought 3 contractor-grade, 50-gallon trash bags. I began to pull the hangers from the rod. Letting the clothes fall, I tore them down. I went into the bathroom. His toothbrush, his cologne, his deodorant, all of it went into the bags. I was not sentimental. This was a data purge. This was scrubbing a compromised server. I worked for 6 hours, room by room, every picture of us, every stupid souvenir, every book he'd left. I erased him from my space, piece by piece. When I was done, I dragged the 3 heavy bags into the garage, a monument to a bad investment. I rearranged the furniture in the living room. I moved my yoga mat into the guest room, reclaiming the space Brielle had labeled our room. When I was finished, the house was no longer ours. It was not even the mine that had been violated. It was Skylar Atavitu. Clean, optimized, secure. I went to my phone and shut off all social media notifications. I turned off all news alerts, the noise of the outside world. The noise of Brielle's desperate, public campaign was irrelevant. I needed to conserve my energy. That night, the eve of the hearing, I did something I hadn't done since the invasion. I poured a glass of wine and walked out to my courtyard. The air was cold, the sky clear. I sat on the stone bench. I had not been out here at night since I'd installed the floodlights. They were off, and the yard was peaceful. I listened to the wind as it swept over the top of the high adobe walls. The walls had been breached. The perimeter had been compromised by the man I trusted most. But the walls were still standing, and I had rebuilt them, reinforced them with new materials, police reports, notarized letters, legal filings, and a chain of forensic evidence. I sat there for a long time, feeling the cold stone under my palms and the cool glass in my hand. I was not angry. I was not sad. I was calm. Caleb and his family operated on the chaotic, messy, unpredictable plane of emotion. They used guilt and rage and pity as weapons. They were storms. I would not be. I made a silent promise to myself, in the dark, surrounded by my walls. Tomorrow, I would not engage in their chaos. I would not yell. I would not cry. I would not explain myself. I would let the law be the final circuit breaker. I would let the facts close the loop. I finished my wine, went inside, locked my new deadbolt, and set my alarm for 6 a.m. I slept soundly. The courtroom was on the 3rd floor of the Red Hollow Municipal Building. It was small, painted a depressing institutional beige, and smelled of stale coffee and industrial floor wax. It was a room designed for processing data, not for high drama. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my back straight. I wore the charcoal gray suit I reserved for major budget presentations. Beside me, Ava was quietly arranging 3 slim, tabbed binders. Across the narrow aisle, the atmosphere was a circus. Brielle, Dax, and Lydia were huddled shoulder to shoulder, a united front of cheap suits and palpable anxiety. Their lawyer, a rumpled man named Haas, whose tie was already crooked, was shuffling a mountain of disorganized papers. Caleb was not with them. I saw him slip into the back row of the small gallery, his face sallow. He looked like a man who had been summoned to his own autopsy. "All rise," the bailiff said. We stood. The judge, a sharp-featured woman named Alito, entered and took her seat. She looked at the docket, then at the 2 tables. "I have read the preliminary filings for Case 921C. Ms. Stanton, your client is seeking a permanent restraining order and scheduling for civil damages. Mr. Haas, your clients are opposing. Mr. Haas, you may begin." Haas stood up and tried to project a voice twice his size. "Your Honor, this is a travesty, a simple family misunderstanding. My clients, Mr. and Mrs. Merrick, were in a severe housing crisis. They were victims of a predatory landlord." Ava's pen made a small, sharp note. I knew she had the eviction judgment for non-payment, ready to go. "They turned to their family," Haas continued, gesturing wildly. "To their brother, Mr. Caleb Merrick, the plaintiff's husband. Mr. Merrick, in an act of familial charity, offered them a place to stay. He gave them verbal permission, a verbal contract. What we have here is not a crime, Your Honor. It's a cruel, vindictive overreaction by Ms. Campbell, who is using this court to punish her husband's family." He sat down, looking pleased with himself. Ava stood. Her voice, by contrast, was calm, precise, and cut through the room like a scalpel. "Your Honor, Mr. Haas is correct about one thing. This is not a misunderstanding. It is a crime. The defense's entire case rests on a verbal permission that is, 1. Legally irrelevant as Mr. Caleb Merrick has no ownership stake in the property, and 2. Factually, provably false. The defendants did not arrive due to a housing crisis. They invaded as part of a long-term premeditated plan." She gestured to the small monitor facing the judge. "We have compiled a 5-minute video summary of the undisputed, time-stamped digital record. With the court's permission?" "Proceed," Judge Alito said. The lights dimmed. The screen lit up. The first image was from Mrs. Davies's porch. Time code, 1:51 p.m. Brielle, standing on the sidewalk, looking at my house. Her voice was perfectly clear. "She'll be in that quarterly review until at least 5. Caleb said it's her biggest meeting of the month. We have plenty of time to get the big stuff in before she even knows." Lydia, sitting behind Haas, let out a small, strangled gasp. The video cut. My street camera. 2:02 p.m. The U-Haul backing into my driveway. Cut. My front door. 2:04 p.m. The log identifier. Key ID 002B. Duplicate. Flashed on the screen as the door swung open. Cut. My living room. 2:08 p.m. Brielle, smiling, taping the blue painter's tape to my office door. The zoom was perfect. The words, "Our room," sharp and undeniable. Cut. Black screen. Audio only. Dax's voice. 2:09 p.m. "Grab the rest of the boxes." Early next week. Cut, living room video, 2:10 p.m. The alarm blares. Brielle laughs, waving her hand at the ceiling speaker. It's fine. It's Caleb's house. And then, the finale. The screen went black again, showing only a single, blue, jumping audio wave, my phone call. 3:21 p.m. Brielle's voice, not laughing, but a raw, hysterical shriek. You owe me! And then, the demand, ringing through the silent courtroom. $20,000. Skylar, $20,000. The video ended. The lights came up. The entire room was frozen. Brielle's face was a mottled, weeping red. Mr. Haas was staring at his papers as if they had betrayed him. Judge Alito looked at him, her face a mask of judicial neutrality, but her eyes were cold. Ms. Stanton, that was illustrative. Please continue with your evidence. Thank you, Your Honor. Ava said, that video establishes the timeline, the intent, and the extortion. Now, let's dismantle the defense's claims, piece by piece. First, the misunderstanding, Exhibit B, a handwritten letter, retrieved by the Red Hollow PD from my client's patio door, where Ms. Merrick left it in violation of the temporary restraining order. She placed the scanned letter on the overhead projector. She highlighted a single, damning sentence. I quote, "We just wanted to stay for a few months, maybe 6 at the most, Your Honor. A few months is not a visit. It is a confirmation of intent to occupy, which she has just provided in her own hand." Second, the verbal contract. After their arrest, the defendants attempted to manufacture evidence, Exhibit C, a temporary lease agreement emailed to my client by Mr. Dax Merrick. It purports to be a 6-month rent-free lease, signed by Caleb Merrick. Haas jumped up. We stand by that document, Your Honor. It proves our case. Then you will have no objection, Ava said sweetly, to the testimony of our forensic document examiner. The expert's testimony was 5 minutes of pure, brutal deconstruction. The document metadata shows it was created at 4:55 p.m. on November 7th. That is nearly 3 hours after the defendant's arrest. The signature of Mr. Caleb Merrick is a low-resolution image file, digitally pasted onto the signature line. You can see the pixel fragmentation right here. It is, unequivocally, a forgery. Judge Alito's pen was moving very, very quickly. A forgery, she repeated, her voice flat. Duly noted. Ava was just warming up. Now, to the housing crisis claim. We call the representative from Red Hollow Rentals. The man from the U-Haul office was sworn in. His testimony was brief. Ms. Stanton, can you confirm when the truck used in the incident was rented? Yes, ma'am. It was a 20-foot truck, reserved on October 31st, 1 week prior to the incident. Ms. Stanton, and who reserved this truck? A Mr. Dax Merrick. Ms. Stanton, and did he give a reason for the rental? Yes, he listed the destination as my address. He said he was moving in. Thank you. No further questions. Ava looked at the judge. 1 week's planning, Your Honor, not an emergency. Next, we call Mrs. Davies. My neighbor was sworn in. She was a pillar of sensible, grandmotherly calm. Mrs. Davies, Ava said, you saw the defendants arrive? I did. I was on my porch. That young woman, she pointed directly at Brielle, was in charge. She was telling the 2 men from the truck where to put a big cabinet, telling them to be careful of the wall. She was bossing them around like she owned the place, and that was a good 10 minutes before that awful siren ever went off. Thank you. Mrs. Davies, she was directing the move before the alarm. Finally, Your Honor, we call Mr. Caleb Merrick. Caleb looked like he was walking to his own execution. He took the stand. Ava's voice was almost gentle. Mr. Merrick, are you on the title for the property at my address? Caleb looked at his hands. No, Do you have any legal ownership stake in that property whatsoever? No. Did your wife, the plaintiff, ever give you the authority to rent, lease, or move new tenants into her home? No. But you did. In fact, tell your sister she could move in, didn't you? I just wanted to help. They had nowhere to go. I told them they could stay for a bit. Did you inform your wife of this arrangement? Not beforehand. No. In fact, you waited until you knew she would be in an all-day budget meeting, correct? You used your knowledge of her work schedule to facilitate this move-in behind her back. Mr. Haas objected. Speculation, Your Honor. Overruled, the judge snapped. It's a yes or no question. Mr. Merrick? Caleb swallowed. He looked at me, a desperate, pleading look. I met his gaze. I felt nothing. I was a gray rock. Yes, he whispered. And you did this, Ava concluded, her voice ringing out. Knowing full well you had absolutely no legal or moral right to give away your wife's property. Yes, he said again, defeated. No further questions. Mr. Haas stood up, his papers shaking in his hand. He looked at his clients, who were looking at him with undisguised panic. Your Honor, in light of this testimony, which has come as a great shock to my clients, a great emotional shock, we request a 30-day continuance to reevaluate our position. This is a family matter that has been blown out of proportion. Judge Alito held up her hand. The gesture commanded absolute silence. Mr. Haas, she said, her voice sharp as broken glass. Your clients are not in shock. They are caught. What I have seen here today is not a family matter, and it is not a misunderstanding. It is a clear, deliberate, and malicious conspiracy to defraud a homeowner and steal her property. She turned her gaze on Brielle and Dax, and it was withering. You were not visiting. You rented a truck a week in advance. You did not have permission. You used an unauthorized duplicate key. You did not have a housing crisis. You had a plan. You timed your invasion for when the sole owner was not home. You created a fraudulent lease after your arrest to try and cover your tracks. And then, she picked up the file summary. You attempted to extort $20,000 from the victim when your plan failed. She looked back at Haas. Your request for a continuance is emphatically denied. This is one of the most clear-cut cases of unlawful entry, trespass, and attempted civil fraud I have ever seen. She looked at me. The court finds overwhelmingly in favor of the plaintiff. The temporary restraining order is hereby made permanent for the maximum allowable term. Brielle Merrick, Dax Merrick, and Lydia Merrick are legally barred from coming within 500 yards of Ms. Skylar Campbell, her home, or her place of employment. A hearing is scheduled for December 1st to determine the full extent of civil damages, including all legal fees, security costs, and punitive damages for the defendant's malicious conduct and defamation. She was not done. As for the matter of the $20,000 demand, which constitutes felony extortion, and the knowing presentation of a forged document, a document Mr. Haas just admitted he stood by to this court, I am referring this entire file, with my personal notes, to the district attorney's office for immediate criminal review. Brielle let out a high-pitched wail and slumped forward, sobbing. Lydia looked, for the first time in her life, utterly, completely powerless. The judge struck her gavel. We are adjourned. The day for the civil damages hearing, what I had come to think of as the final systems audit, was December 1st. The air in Red Hollow was biting, sharp with the first real promise of snow. The courtroom was the same, but the energy had shifted. The desperate, chaotic bluster from the Merrick table was gone, replaced by a sullen, toxic silence. Brielle, Dax, and Lydia were there, dressed in the same crumpled suits. They looked exhausted, not from remorse, but from the stress of their own failed conspiracy. Mr. Haas looked like a man who hadn't been paid. Caleb was not in the gallery. He was, per Ava's demand, waiting in a separate conference room with his own divorce attorney, pending the outcome of this hearing. Judge Alito entered, sat, and fixed her gaze on the room. "We are here to conclude the civil matter in case 921C, Ms. Stanton. I have reviewed your itemized list of damages. Do you have any final submissions before I rule?" "Yes, Your Honor. 2 brief but critical items," Ava said, standing. Her voice was a clean, sharp line in the stale air. "First, we submit Exhibit G, a receipt from Red Hollow Hardware, dated 2 months prior to the invasion." She placed it on the overhead projector. "It is for the duplication of 2 house keys. The credit card signature, as you can see, belongs to the defendant, Mr. Dax Merrick. This confirms the long-term premeditation and access, well before any housing crisis was ever claimed." A low groan came from Lydia. Haas put his head in his hands. "Second," Ava continued, "we submit Exhibit H, the official dispatch log from the plaintiff's security provider. I draw your attention to the audio transcript from 2:09 p.m., when the automated system demanded a property passcode." She placed the new document on the projector. There, in stark, official type, was the log. "System, please state your passcode now." Voice female. "It's fine. We're fine. It's Caleb's house. We're his family. Just shut up." The voice, Ava said, was identified by the plaintiff as that of Ms. Brielle Merrick. Not, "We have permission." Not, "It's a mistake." But, "It's Caleb's house." A statement of assumed ownership. "We have nothing further." Judge Alito looked at the new evidence. She looked at the defendants. She steepled her fingers. This court has had 2 weeks to review the mountain of evidence, and these 2 final submissions have only reinforced the conclusion. This was not a mistake. This was not a cry for help. This was a calculated, malicious, and frankly, inept attempt to seize another person's property. She began to read from her notes, her voice a relentless, factual cadence. "I find that the defendants, Brielle and Dax Merrick, did knowingly and with premeditation commit illegal entry and criminal trespass. I find that they, with the assistance of Lydia Merrick, did conspire to occupy the plaintiff's residence with the full intent to remain indefinitely, as proven by Ms. Merrick's own handwritten letter. I find that they did create and present a fraudulent document to the plaintiff and to this court, in an attempt to justify their crimes. I find that they did, separately, engage in a campaign of slander and defamation, as proven by the social media postings, and direct harassment, as proven by the call to Ms. Campbell's employer. And finally, I find that Ms. Brielle Merrick did, with clear intent, attempt to extort a sum of $20,000 from the plaintiff. The district attorney's office has, I can confirm, accepted that referral for criminal review." Brielle let out a small, whimpering sound. "Therefore," the judge continued, "this court orders the following. The permanent restraining order is in full effect. Brielle Merrick, Dax Merrick, and Lydia Merrick are legally barred from any and all contact. This court orders the defendants, jointly and severally, to pay full restitution to the plaintiff, Ms. Skylar Campbell, for all costs incurred," she began to list them, "for the complete rekeying of the property, $640, for the installation of the upgraded enterprise-level security system, including new sensors and floodlights, $8,450, for the plaintiff's home insurance premium increase, prorated for 2 years, $512, for the full and complete legal fees incurred by the plaintiff in this matter, $22,700. Dax's face went white. He looked like he was going to be sick. "And finally," the judge said, looking directly at Brielle, "for the profound emotional distress, the violation of safety, and the malicious nature of the defamation and extortion. This court awards punitive damages to Ms. Campbell in the amount of $50,000. The total judgment against the defendants is $82,302, due immediately. A lien will be placed on any and all of their assets, including Mr. Dax Merrick's new truck, until this judgment is satisfied." It was a kill shot, a life-altering, reputation-destroying, financial atom bomb. It was not a slap on the wrist, it was a severing. It was at this moment that a new voice cut in. A man I didn't recognize. Caleb's divorce lawyer had stepped in from the side door. "Your Honor, if I may, regarding the associated marital dissolution." Judge Alito turned to him, her patience clearly gone. "This is not the time, Counselor. That is a separate matter. But it pertains to the assets, Your Honor," he pressed, clearly a man paid by the hour to be obnoxious. "My client, Mr. Caleb Merrick, while not contesting the divorce, does contest the division of property. He has contributed to the mortgage. He has paid for upkeep. He is entitled to his 50% share of the marital home." The room went completely still. After everything, after the text messages, the betrayal, the corporate fraud, he was still trying to take my house. Before Judge Alito could even respond, Ava stood. She didn't look at the judge. She looked at Caleb's lawyer. "Counselor," she said, her voice dripping with pity. "You are dangerously misinformed." She turned to the clerk. "If we could play the video summary once more. Please, just the first 20 seconds. The lights dimmed again. The screen lit up. 1:51 p.m. Mrs. Davies's porch. Brielle's voice. "She'll be in that quarterly review until at least 5. 2:08 p.m. My living room. Brielle, smiling, taping our room to my door." "Stop," Ava said. The image froze on the sign. "Your Honor," Ava said, the lights coming up. "This sign was taped to my client's door before any alarm, before any police, and, as Mr. Merrick himself testified, before my client even knew what was happening. This was the flag of their occupation. This was the proof of their intent. It was all planned. This was the moment. The final, visual proof of her failure was too much for the matriarch. "She's lying!" Lydia shrieked, jumping to her feet so fast her chair screeched and toppled over behind her. "It's not true. I told them to get the big stuff in. I told Caleb to get them that key 2 months ago. I said, she'll be gone all day. Just get the bed in before she has time to get home and be cold to you. I told them. It was my plan." She stood there, heaving, her face purple, her finger pointed at me. She had just confessed to conspiracy and premeditation, in open court, on the record. Mr. Haas didn't even try to stop her. He just sat, staring into the middle distance, a man completely adrift. Judge Alito looked at the court stenographer. "Did you get all of that, Madam Reporter?" The stenographer nodded. "Good." The judge looked at Lydia, her eyes like chips of ice. "Thank you for your clarification, Mrs. Merrick. You have just confirmed, on the record, your primary role in the conspiracy. Bailiff. Please note, Mrs. Merrick's voluntary, self-incriminating statement." She turned to Caleb's lawyer. "As for your client's claim, it is denied. This court has reviewed the prenuptial agreement. It is an ironclad, non-contestable document. The property is Ms. Campbell's, bought with premarital funds, and is her sole and separate asset. Your client has zero claim. He is entitled to nothing, not one single dollar. Now get out of my courtroom." Ava and I walked out. The conference room was 1 floor down. Caleb was inside, his lawyer looking pale. Ava placed a single, slim file on the table, the final, uncontested divorce settlement. "You sign this, Caleb," Ava said, "and it's over. You walk away with your personal effects and nothing else. You contest it, and we go to trial." I want," he started, looking at his lawyer. "You want what, Caleb?" Ava said, leaning in. "You have no claim to the house. That's been established. And as for your other assets, I'm not sure your employer, Northbridge Ledger Works, would be happy to know you committed wire fraud using your corporate card to buy a truck for your brother-in-law, or that you handed over confidential company schedules, like my client's all-day budget review, to facilitate a crime. I have the text messages. Caleb, I have the Amex statement. Sign the papers, and Skylar agrees not to file a criminal complaint for the fraud or a civil suit for your role as co-conspirator. He was trapped. His career, his entire life, was hanging by the thread of my signature. He picked up the pen. He looked at me, one last time, his eyes hollow. Sky. I just looked at him. I was a gray rock. I was a balance sheet. He was a bad debt, being written off. He signed his name. He gave up all rights to my home, my accounts, my retirement, everything. It's done, his lawyer said. It is, Ava said, taking the papers. We walked out into the main hallway. The doors to the courtroom burst open. Brielle, her face a mask of tears and raw, unfiltered hatred, saw me. You! She screamed, lunging toward me. You ruined my life! You bitch! You'll… She never finished. Two large bailiffs, who had clearly been anticipating this, stepped in front of her, blocking her path. The order is in effect, ma'am, one of them said, his voice bored. You are in violation. You need to leave. Now. Dax grabbed her arm, his face ashen, and dragged her toward the elevators, Lydia following behind. For the first time in her life, utterly silent, the Merrick family, broken, defeated, and now, in severe, life-altering debt, disappeared as the elevator doors closed. I stepped out of the courthouse at 4 p.m. The sun was already low, the winter air clean and cold against my face. In my left hand, I held the new, heavy brass key to my new deadbolt. In my right hand, in my briefcase, was a certified, stamped copy of the judgment, a legal document that quantified my boundaries, a piece of paper that had more power than all of Lydia's threats, Brielle's tears, and Caleb's lies combined. My borders, once just walls of wood and adobe, were now carved into Colorado state law. I drove home. I didn't rush. I didn't turn on the radio. I parked in my garage, the space that now held only my car. I walked to my new front door. I didn't use the key. I typed in my new code, a sequence of numbers known only to me. The system disarmed with its polite, familiar chirp. I stepped inside. The house was silent. It smelled like me. I walked through the living room, past my office, and slid open the glass door to my courtyard. The air was still. I stood on the cold stones and looked up at my high, impenetrable walls. A light breeze, the first of the night, whispered over the top. I stepped back inside and slid the heavy door closed. I turned the lock. The quiet, satisfying click of the bolt sliding into place was the only sound in the room. It was the sound of peace. It was the sound of legal, absolute, and earned security. The story was over. The breach was closed. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm so curious to know where in the world you're tuning in from, so please drop a comment below and share your thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories and like this video, and please, hit that hype button. It really helps get these stories out to more people who need to hear them.